College football nerds here doing our first hypothetical of the season, and I think this is an obvious one. Josh is here with me, and we are talking Iowa and Texas A&M because, Josh, we are sitting here praying that the college football gods smile on us and give these two teams 6 wins apiece, and they can see each other in Birmingham, because I can't imagine a more exciting affair if you like to see punts. But, Josh, before we get into this, I want to remind you that the fine folks at Iowa heard that the best offenses almost never punt, and I think that that's their approach. At least that's what they tried against Ohio State, was to not punt at all, just give them the ball in the 20. So, Josh, let's get into this, and let's talk about what this matchup would look like, this offensive explosion, because I think there's some great numbers to talk about. There's some great punts and Australian punt discussions and maybe some turnover strategies that we can get into. So let's get this one going. I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, so, when you look at these two teams, I think they're really defined by the struggle in trying to help make sure the punting yardage is on par with everything else going on. So right now, Iowa, from their offensive production, they're doing pretty well, right? So they're right at 1,200 yards passing, 1,241 yards passing. And then obviously the more important statistic, they're at 2,149 yards punting. So yeah, the punting yardage is about 900 yards ahead of passing yardage, which is really what you want ideally as a football team, because we all know really college football is about complementary football. And I know Ferentz really made a point with that, right? That you need to make sure that your punt game complements your run game and your pass game, and it does that by sort of doubling it up. I think Texas A&M's hasn't quite gotten the feel for that yet. They're on the right pace, 1,700 yards punting, a little further behind in the passing yardage. They're at 1,887, so about 187 yards passing more than they have punting this season. So that's a little more disappointing. I'll also say they got a punting deficit, right? So they're 42.5 yards per punt from Texas A&M. Iowa, again, a little stronger, 44.85 yards per punt. In these two teams and how they play football, that 2.3 yards per punt really adds up over the 10 to 14 3-and-outs that occur consecutively over the course of the game. That ends up being to 1 or 2 crucial field goals that will tend to decide an outcome of a match.
College Football Nerds has a sponsor for the 2022 college football season. It is Bird Dogs. You can check them out at birddogs.com. They make good-looking clothes for guys. And Josh, I recently went on vacation. It was in the Caribbean. My wife said you need to take a proper swimsuit. I didn't have any swimsuits, but I did have some Bird Dog shorts, and they are lined, so I say that counts as a proper swimsuit. I did use them to swim in the ocean, in the pool, but also could wear them around the cruise ship. And I felt like I looked a lot better than my fellow cruisers, at least the ones with the dad vibes, rocking the cargo shorts. And my wife approved, so okay, that's a good pass. But when I got home, had a little bit of a business trip, had my Bird Dog pants with me too. No pleats, no box cut. Looked pretty clean. Had a nice fit. So felt good about that too. But Josh, I think you've had some similar experiences with Bird Dogs.
Well, Daniel, I'm a simple nerd. And as a simple nerd, I struggle with figuring out how to make myself look fashionable. And I found that Bird Dogs do a good job of it. I obviously, I'm a fine specimen. But some days, having something that you can trot out that looks nice and is comfortable to wear is great. And Bird Dogs is really good because they have a lot of clothes that are good for casual occasions, and they've got stuff that's good for a business casual office like I'm in. I've got the Bird Dogs shorts here, and you can see, they're good. They've got liner. They come in a lot of colors and styles, some more or less flashy. You got pockets, even got a little zipper pocket for geeks like me, but they don't look like cargo shorts, right? And I am that dork that wore cargo shorts pretty much all the way through high school and college, and to grow up a little bit and wear something a little nicer is a nice change of pace.
So go to birddogs.com, enter promo code NERDS. It was CFB Nerds, but now we're just going with nerds because that's what we are. And they'll throw in a free Bird Dogs rope hat. That's birddogs.com, promo code NERDS, and boom, free Bird Dogs rope hat with your pair of Bird Dogs. The most comfortable shorts, pants, sweatpants with built-in liners. You're not going to want to take these things off, I promise. And guys, we don't do a lot of asks from y'all. We don't do a Patreon or anything like that, not even any merch yet. But one thing we do ask is when we have somebody that supports the channel, you support them as well. That's birddogs.com, promo code NERDS. So it's pretty clear to me Iowa coming into this season, and we'll get to A&M in a second, but Iowa fans want to hear this. They're looking to build on what they did last year. So last year they were 99th in scoring, which, that's double digits, and they're going for triple digits, I'm guessing. And that's why they gave their offensive coordinator a raise. So to me, 99th in scoring, and they got a $50,000 raise, which is about, the average U.S. household income. Give him a raise, coach's son, which is something like he earned that. He earned being the coach's son. So let's give him a raise. And this year he's really shown out. 125th in scoring. But there is, there's two. There's two Power 5 teams right behind Iowa, Colorado and Georgia Tech. So they're in rarefied air. I think that there's still time to get that 131st slot. That's Massachusetts. But, Josh, they scored in the 30s this week against Northwestern, so they're kind of going backwards. So I'm hoping they can right the ship coming up this next week. Talk a little bit about what we could expect in a game like this from Texas A&M. I know that Jimbo Fisher likes to make his system as complicated as possible, and now he's thrown a freshman quarterback in the mix. But it looked like from this game Saturday that the freshman quarterback hasn't had a chance to get ruined by his offense yet, because he actually looked pretty good, which is maybe not what they want.
Yeah, I think right now, because of where he's at as a freshman, they haven't been able to move in as many wrinkles to the offense as they want. So right now, all they're really doing is running the ball effectively and hitting shots down the field, especially on the boundary. They really haven't worked in middle of the field shots that get thrown short or complicated route concepts that leave nobody open in the intermediate game. And I think it's going to take some time for there to be enough hits on the quarterback such that he just, you get to what's the added component, which is the throwaways and the throws directly to a safety. And really, when you get those parts mixed into it, that's when the offense really comes alive and really gets all the dynamic concepts that Fisher wants to put out there. And you'll say it for Fisher this year, right? We've talked about for a few years now. I mean, they're guaranteed to put some points on the board. I mean, 10 to 25 points per game on a consistent basis. And I really, what I think is impressive is the range of ways that they accomplish those points, and the ways in which they don't accomplish those points too. I think football should best be viewed, as an opera. And really, it's all the acts of a football game that Fisher likes to put on. And as a conductor, as the person that's directing the orchestra, the symphony that is the Texas A&M offense, I think Wegman has got to step forward a little bit so that he can move on from just using the violin and the piano, and you can, roll into the canon in the 1812 overture, or maybe, the mighty kazoo, and really use every piece of that offense to its fullest potential.
Well, and there's one page per instrument, I think, in Jimbo Fisher's play sheets that he carries to the field. So Texas A&M's got a little bit of work to do. They're 104th, which is it's a lot better than Iowa's doing right now, which is surprising because if you watch Texas A&M play, you feel like they're up there with the other terrible offenses in college football. But maybe also some of our scoring perception is marred by the fact that sometimes for both of these teams, they screw up and actually score defensively or with special teams, which is clearly not what they're going for. It's got to be frustrating as a coach when you're working so hard to make your offense so complicated that your offense never scores, and then your defense screws up and scores for them. But let's get into the model a little bit and see if these two teams play today, kind of, by the way, these are real numbers, what that game might look like and how exciting it might be. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we ran our model. That's our normal model with the actual statistics for this team. Iowa, of course, generating 3.1 yard per carry, 5.9 yard per attempt. Those are real numbers. Texas A&M, really a good deal more explosive than Iowa, 4.48 yard per carry, 6.3 yards per pass. And then when you look at the defensive percentages, Texas A&M allowing 8% more than opponents' average, probably not ideal given the offensive production they have. 83% against the pass, that was a good number. And Iowa defensively is just trying to make sure every game stays interesting. 71% opponent rushing averages. That's 1% higher than Alabama, which I think right now is tracking is the best number that we've modeled in recent weeks. 80% of opponent passing averages kind of took a bit of a hit, really due to the end of the game there with Ohio State, but still tracking high. And when you combine those two, you get some really impressive offensive predicted numbers. 3.3 and 3.1 yard per carry projected. 4.9 yards per attempt or 5 yards per attempt for either team, averaging about 4 yards per play. And hey, 4 yards per play, 3 plays in a row, that's a first down. So as long as you never throw an incomplete pass, these offenses will be marching down the field at, somewhere around 25 plays per drive in order to probably kick a field goal from the one. And that is reflected in the score here. Texas A&M 13, Iowa 11. These numbers do look kind of strange. It's hard to score 11 points, though. On the other hand, Iowa did score 7 with 2 safeties at one point earlier this year. So, take your pick, and this could be 5 2-point safeties and maybe the lone defensive safety, which that 1-point safety doesn't show up very often, but hey, who knows? A 13-11 score, really showing, I think, the range between these two teams, the impressive margin. Daniel, I don't know if you agree with me, but I feel like 2 points is a lot for Iowa to make up. I mean, a 2-point spread in this game really seems to suggest that Texas A&M's way ahead of Iowa, at least on paper.
Well, then the question for me is 11 and 13, half of that for both of these teams has got to come from the defense, right? Like this in no way are we expecting A&M to hit a 13-point number against a good defense without something from their own defense, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, I have a little bit of a theory on that. So Texas A&M, right, is at 13 points, and so a lot of times I like to do my background research. So I dug into it a good bit, and when you look into Revelation 8,
boy, here we go,
says that there was a bird flying in midair that cried out, "Woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth," and clearly I think that's referring to the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then in Revelation 22, it refers to outsider the dogs, those who practice magic arts, which is likely referring to Texas A&M. And then further, if you take it a step more, when you look at the Lovecraft Saga, much of that actually takes place in Massachusetts. And who is the lowest scoring offense in the country right now? That is the University of Massachusetts. You combine that with the number 13, and it's clear that there is some sort of dark magic at play between these two teams, and I can't quite say which side the evil is on, but it does seem that evil is likely to at least prevail on the offensive side of the ball.
It's late for Josh. He did manage to work Massachusetts in. It's Halloween Eve, and we had to get some reference maybe implied to the Salem witch trials in there. Josh, I'm ready to give my score prediction on this one. I like A&M's. If we're talking about points is a good thing, which, watching these two teams play this year, I don't think they agree with us on that. But from my perspective, everything I've been conditioned to think from how I've been raised on college football, scoring more points is a good thing. I think A&M's defense is probably equipped to score a few more points than Iowa's defense. But both of these are very good defenses. It's really going to come down to short fields for me. I think A&M. I've got A&M in this one. Give me A&M 9, Iowa 4. Tell me what you got.
So, as I said, I think the key to this game really is that Iowa does have a bit of a punting advantage. And so there's about 2.3 yards per punt. And an average game usually lasts about 15 possessions. So if you sort of extrapolate that out, you're looking around 50 to 60 yards in punting advantage. I think that likely leads to an additional field goal for Iowa. For me, I would pick this game 10-7 Iowa. I mean, I think if Texas A&M had to face Iowa's defense in real life, it is unlikely that they would cross the 50 more than one time. And that's not even a joke. And I think from a defensive score perspective, Iowa was more likely to score than Texas A&M. To be clear, I don't know that Iowa would ever score offensively on Texas A&M. Texas A&M's defense is quite good. They have a good defensive line. They've been run on some, but Iowa's not good enough to run the ball for that to probably matter. So I do think it would be sort of a matter of who gets a defensive score and who manages to win the field position battle well enough to kick a field goal and take the lead. And in that regard, I think this could be Iowa's football game to win. Now, if they keep screwing up and get a freshman that develops, Texas A&M could turn a corner. But right now, with these two teams and where they're at, I kind of would take my odds to the better defensive team and tip my hat to Iowa to win.
And if you look at this situation, if this played out in a bowl game going into the offseason, I think it's going to be a challenge for both of these teams because Iowa's going to have to figure out how much of a raise to give Brian Ferentz to run the offense again next year, really shooting for that 131. And Texas A&M is going to have to figure out how much money in NIL dollars their collective is going to give to the top punter in the country, because I don't think there's going to be a year that punters from Australia, especially the best ones, are more prized and more poised to really get paid, either in the portal or just straight up 26-year-old freshmen like they always are. But A&M's really going to pay some real big bucks for that. Josh, as a parting shot, a little bit more serious, I'd love for you to talk about, we made this video kind of as a parody, but it was born out of frustration from seeing one is nepotism at Iowa, and the other one is probably a little bit of ego, or a lot of bit of ego at A&M. But in both scenarios, I feel like the coaches aren't doing the best service to the program, to the fans, the respect for the position they hold, by putting the best possible offense on the field in terms of either coaching staff or letting go of the reins at A&M. Talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating and disappointing. And the truth of the matter is that Iowa just doesn't have a ton of offensive talent. They just don't. There's not many pieces on that offense that anyone's particularly scared of. The offensive line's not very good. The quarterback play's not very good. And everybody was calling for the backup quarterback to be put in. And I think sometimes people look for the easy solution. Look, it was clear when Padilla went in, he wasn't any better than Petrus. I mean, the first play is a turnover, turns around and throws an interception. It was a little bit baffling, frankly. I don't know what the options are other than the reality of you have to do something to build an offense for 9 months out of the year. And this idea that they're just playing complementary football is a joke. I will say Iowa beat Northwestern by 20 points. This speaks to the fact why we earlier talked about Northwestern playing some other teams. That would be cough, cough, Penn State in a close game, and saying that was a really terrible game to ever be close with Northwestern at all, no matter if it's bad weather or what. But even in that game, they didn't try to backup quarterback in that situation, which I find kind of troubling, right? You had to pull Petrus in a game that matters. Oh, we've got a game we can actually win. Let's not see if the backup quarterback can establish anything here. There's just no forward thinking. And then on Texas A&M's part, yeah, they've gone through multiple quarterbacks, but we were talking about this before. The most disturbing aspect for me with Texas A&M is, of the 3 quarterbacks they've played, the starter was the worst option. Haynes King was by far the worst. And he's the guy that you decided to roll with to lose to Appalachian State. And it's pretty clear at this point you would have beat him with Max Johnson, and you probably would have beat him with Connor Wegman. I watched game 1, and I put out this crappy little short to say, look, I've seen him throw like 3 passes against Sam Houston State. And this guy is staring down his receivers and has no idea what's going on. He threw this like 30, 40-yard completion to the edge of the right to the sideline. And I pointed out there's a corner dropping in coverage, and he threw a dime over the corner's head. And it's like, no, he just got lucky. He had no idea the corner was there. The receiver went it and took the ball from the DB, and he's just lucky that it was thrown high, because if he threw it where he meant to throw it, it would have been picked. And somehow the coaching staff doesn't see that. It's crazy. It's crazy what they're trotting out. And unlike Iowa, where I don't think they have a better option, the thing that's such an indictment to me is Texas A&M did. they had better options, and they went with King voluntarily. I don't know. It's nuts. And I think Texas A&M is probably going to end up being a somewhat better offense than they were at the beginning of the year, but they're going to do it almost just by virtue of having the worst guys that you tried to play get hurt, so you're forced to play somebody better as a freshman. The problem is you may end up ruining Wegman, like, what happened maybe to Kyle Allen a few years ago, or even Murray, and you can end up back in this same cycle. I mean, there's a lot of positives with Evan Stewart. I think A-Chain's a good back, but A-Chain's going to leave, and I don't know what you're going to have at that point. Maybe Anaya Smith comes back, but it just, I mean, they've got to figure out something, do something different, modernize that offense, use all the broken RPO rules, which both these teams completely seem intent on ignoring the reality that college football is broken from a rule perspective to the benefit of offenses that run the RPO and are willing to block downfield while they throw the football, so that, it takes away keys for the safety. So if you want me to be serious, there's a lot of anger and frustration on my part when I look at these two teams, and the fact that you've got coaches, and I have no qualm of speaking up when you're dealing with coaches like this, because these guys are making several $1 million a year. And if you're making $100 million guaranteed, you can deal with an amateur college football analyst chewing you out when you're rolling that kind of a product out on the football field.
Yeah, and I'll end with this. Kirk Ferentz saying that he felt like it was an inquisition to answer basic questions of, hey, you're 125th in scoring offense, and you just had 6 turnovers against Ohio State, and you looked completely unprepared to play football on the offensive side all year. Is there any consideration to maybe going in a different direction than your kid at offensive coordinator? And he said that was an inquisition. He's not going to even entertain that question. Jimbo Fisher isn't going to entertain the question of giving up the reins of play calling. It's incumbent on you to respect the gift that you've been given to run these storied programs who have very passionate fan bases that pour their time, effort, and generational interest into your programs. You need to treat that with respect and put the best possible product on the field that you can, and not figure it out, like you said, and maybe fall into some wins at the end of the year and go 7-5 or whatever. That's disrespectful when you've got, Jimbo Fisher said it this offseason. It's easy to win when you're more talented than everybody else. He's got gobs of talent on that team, and he might go 6-6 or 7-5. That is utterly inexcusable. Defense is, for the most part, doing its job. It's time for him to step back and give a simplified offense to all that talent and let him eat. That's all we're going to say. We hope you had fun watching this. We had fun making it. We don't do stuff this silly all the time, but it's Halloween. It'll be Wednesday when you check this one out. This one's going to need to get shared for people to see it. So please share this everywhere you can. YouTube algorithm's not going to know because nobody's searching for Iowa and Texas A&M. If they do play in a bowl game, this is going to be hilarious. Thanks so much, y'all. Give us some comments. Let us know what you thought about this one. Have a great week. God bless.